Welcome to the Growth Boss Podcast, where we seek out the secrets to high-performing campaigns from some of the smartest marketers in the world. I'm your host, Jared Smith. Today I have Dr. Wilson Zehr with me, and he's going to teach us how you can return $13 for every $1 invested in your marketing campaigns. Dr. Zehr is a tech entrepreneur, business leader, and educator with over 20 years of experience in technology, telecom, and SaaS. He has built and launched many successful products and brands, raised over $60 million for startups, and worked with some of the biggest companies like Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, and HP. As a founder and CEO of Cendix and a co-founder of Zairmail, Wilson has helped businesses grow through smart marketing, sales strategy, and innovation. Wilson, thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, Jared. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. Should be fun to talk.
I think so. I'm looking forward to gaining some wisdom and revelation from you on how to get a high return on marketing. So talk to us. What are some of the keys that we need to be following if we want to get $13 back for every dollar invested?
Yeah, the $13 per dollar invested revolves around direct mail. Those are numbers reported by the Direct Marketing Association. They say on average, businesses can get a return of $13 for every dollar invested using targeted direct mail. I saw statistics this morning that were even more favorable than that. But a lot of it boils down to being able to, target the right people with the product or service they need and then help them be successful. I mean, with direct response marketing, and direct response doesn't have to be mail, by the way. Direct response, when we're talking about direct response, we're talking about getting somebody to contact you directly with the sole purpose of purchasing or, getting assistance with a purchase-related activity. And we can do that with mail, we can do that with TV, we can do that with radio, we can do that with a number of mediums. And I don't know if we're ready for the whole, response versus brand advertising discussion. But the basic idea is that determinant of the success of a direct mail campaign really hinges on three factors. It's about 70% list, 20% offer, and the rest of whatever's left is creative. So we know that if we target the right person with the right message or the right offer, then good things happen. And that's one of the advantages of direct mail is that the demographics exist, the information exists in order to target the right people.
Well, that explains a lot, especially, in this day and age. Go to the mailbox. There's feels like about 10 to 20, pieces of direct mail in my mailbox. And now I know why I get so much mail. It's because these brands are getting, realistically $13 back for every dollar they spend. And again, that's the average, right? So hopefully if we take the advice that you're going to give us today, we can do even better than that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, when we're talking about targeted direct mail, there are still companies that try to carpet bomb America. They're going to, do you remember, I don't know if you remember the old AOL days when they would send out
the CDs, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a friend who had a printing company and handled some of that. And he said they would just ship those in by the pallet load.
Incredible.
But their response rates were quite a bit less than what we're talking about these days.
Yeah. Let's dive into some specifics. What are some practical things that brands can be doing, entrepreneurs can be doing? Maybe we start with direct response in general. And then I would love to also get into the kind of the nitty gritty of sending snail mail. I'm actually doing my first mailing next week with they're called video boxes, a little box you open up, has a little presentation in there,
nice.
Sending those to doctors to see if that'll work for us. So let's start with some direct response tactics. What are some things you've learned? You talked about kind of the offer being a very important part of a direct response campaign. What are some keys there?
I would say, it starts differently than that. Direct mail for me, for us, is a tool. And it's one of many tools we have in our, toolbox. So we don't, as marketers, so we usually more focused on what is the product or service we're offering? What problem does it solve? And, so what does the customer journey look like? And how do we use the tools that we have to help them through that journey? And it might be direct mail, it might be something else. If you think about our business, certainly we use direct mail, but we use other tools too. We use Google AdWords, we use social media, we use a lot of different things. So part of it starts out by understanding what it is that we're selling, and not just the device, but what is the problem we're solving for the customer? What's the value proposition? And then what does that target audience look like? And where can I find them? And we have to set a price point for it that's attractive, that has value, and figure out what the distribution channel would look like. I mean, does it make sense? Go to direct. That doesn't make sense for every product or service. I'm selling, airliners for Boeing. I mean, I'm not expecting somebody to call on the phone and place an order for two.
Right.
So the channel strategy is going to be important. And once you have all of that figured out, which is what we would call a strategic marketing model, and I've got examples and pictures I could show you, but once we have that all figured out, then we can talk about advertising and promotion. And so with advertising and promotion, our goal is going to be to interrupt, inform, and persuade, to help people along their journey to solve their problem, and assuming that we have the right solution, solve the problem using the product or service we have to offer. And direct mail can be very powerful in that regard. It's not the only tool we use, and I can give you some examples of multimedia marketing campaigns that have been successful. But there are certain specific advantages to direct mail. First of all, it has the ability to reach every household and business in America 6 days a week. Mostly often businesses aren't open on Saturday, so maybe 5 days a week for businesses. Most mediums can't do that. And the U.S. Postal Service has a federal charter to do that, to make sure that happens reliably. Secondly, it's proactive communication. If I'm using AdWords or something, which we use, it's a good tool, but I usually have to wait for somebody to come find me. I have to wait for somebody to decide they have a problem and start looking for a solution. And with direct mail, I can reach out and touch them. I can ask them if they have this problem, and if they do, I can solve it. It allows us to have more control over when we engage and how we engage with the customer. The third is, we alluded to earlier, is this idea of precise audience targeting. So if I want to reach Jewish dentists in New Jersey that have purchased a car in the last 6 months, I could probably find that list. If I wanted to do that online, social media, email, something else, that list probably doesn't exist, where the accuracy might be questionable. So that can be powerful, especially if we're trying to reach out and get people to engage with us. And then finally, it's just built into the American psyche. I mean, people are used to, as you talked about earlier, people used to going to the mailbox, usually once a day, pulling out the contents and sorting through it. And there's no negative reaction to it necessarily. I mean, people look at it and it's just part of the routine. As opposed to, think about the last uninvited telemarketing call you got. I mean, how did that go for the caller?
Right.
So that combination of factors is what leads to the higher response rates. But once again, it's just one tool that we need to have in our toolbox as marketers. I
want to back up a little bit. You brought up, I think it was marketing strategy before you're diving into the direct response. You're figuring out who you're serving. You're figuring out the price point, things of that nature. What are the most common mistakes that you see business owners making during that strategic part of a campaign?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm not sure there's just one. there's lots of things we can do to improve, as marketers. But, one common one is to get infatuated with the device rather than the solution of the problem you're trying to solve. People, especially in technology, right? We create this cool new technology whiz-bang thing, and we assume that everybody else in the world is going to see how cool it is. But people don't buy things necessarily. Well, some people buy things because they're just cool technology things, but the mainstream audience does not. The mainstream audience really is trying to solve a problem. And so it's important for us to understand what problem we're solving, what the value, or what the pain point is, and how much it's worth to the consumer to solve that problem, and how we're going to do more effectively than our competitors. So that's a little tricky. The whole thing about, in recent memory too, there's been a lot of talk about minimum viable product and, being able to, agile development, agile response. And that is a very powerful concept too. This idea of having an idea, understanding what problem we're solving or thinking we do, and then getting it in front of a real customer, getting them a minimum viable product so we can test the concept, getting real feedback, incorporating that product and doing it again and repeating that until we have something that we feel relatively confident can be successful in the marketplace, can solve problems for the customer. That's really important. In my experience building products over a lot of years is that we can spend, even a large development organization, sometimes we'll spend months, or I don't want to say a year, but some organizations do take that long, 12 to 18 months to go through a product planning cycle and create a detailed specification of what this product should look like. And then then you spend time to build it and you get it out there in the hands of the customer and it just fails. The customer breaks it and doesn't do what they need to do. And it makes a lot more sense to get something in the hands of the customer first and figure out, if it's going to work or if it isn't, or if there's some other application that really makes sense. I think it's really important. The other thing is that, we know from experience is that especially in the technology industry, I don't know if your audience is mostly technology people or if you have a broader swath than that, but we know the best technology doesn't always win. There are lots of examples of that. But if we can pervasively and efficiently solve a customer's problem at a price point that makes sense, I think we can be very effective, even if we don't have the flashiest technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to direct mail, you've sent a lot of direct mail in your day. What are some of the keys to success that you found in sending large amounts of direct mail?
I guess that's a tricky question that has a couple of different answers. There are companies that once again try to carpet bomb America. They send a lot of mail that less targeted, and Visa and MasterCard come to mind, but not to pick on anybody. They just
Sure.
That's just a numbers game, right? They
Yes.
might get 0.5%, but they know if I spend, X million dollars to get 0.5% return, then I get an ROI that's small, but still makes sense. We don't do a lot of work with those kind of products. Most of the mail we're doing today is first-class mail. Our competitive advantage, if you will, is that we specialize in making mail fast and easy. We handle very quick turns, 40, 50,000 pieces. We'll get them out tomorrow with, very reliably, with very few errors. So this is, no errors usually, but I just hate to be absolute. But when we're doing that kind of targeted marketing, then once again, it comes back to making sure we're talking to the right people and putting the right offer in front of them, understanding the buying process and what role we can play in helping out. Yeah, I think, numbers, there are lots of people who play the numbers game, just sending a lot of pieces with low response rates. And obviously that works for some companies or they wouldn't do it. But I think for the average marketer, that's not a prescription for success. Yeah. It's a lot, we can be a lot more successful and invest a lot less in that to be successful by just understanding our customer, understanding the problem we're solving, and targeting the right people with an offer they don't want to say no to.
And do you help your clients come up with that offer, or are you relying on them to come up with something that's super interesting for their target market?
It's a mixture. If a lot of our customers come to us, they might have their own list, they might have their own offer, and we'll just automate the mailing process for them, which can be, a major hassle if you don't know how to do it. But when customers ask us, we're happy to do that. We usually don't charge anything extra for it. A customer comes up and says, I'm thinking about doing a campaign. Here's my product. Here's a problem I think I'm solving. What would you suggest? We're happy to engage with the customer and help them figure that out. But a lot of customers have marketing people on staff, people who spend all day long thinking about what the product is and how to move it, and we'll help them too. You mentioned direct mail too. The thing about direct mail is it can be really effective. But the U.S. Postal Service is a large organization with a lot of rules, and it can be hard to engage with them at times too. I remember the story that a friend shared with me one time. Marty Smith, who was a VP of marketing at the U.S. Postal Service, said that his dad owned a small business. I think it was a hardware store, but I'm not positive. It's been a while now. And Marty said he was always telling his dad, you should use direct mail. I work at the U.S. Postal Service. Direct mail helps people. You should use it. Be successful. Help you. Help me. It'll be a great opportunity. So one day Dad hears this for years. And so one day he gets up and he says, all right, well, I'm going to try some direct mail. So he trudges down to the U.S. Postal Service, the retail office, walks up to the counter and says, I want to do some direct mail. What do you got for me? And it just, the sound of crickets,
Yeah.
So, that's one of the reasons why people don't use the tool more often is it's hard to know how to get started. And if you do know, it can be a little foreboding. With a tool like Zairmail, we've created a process where you upload a list, upload a document, see a preview of what's going to be produced in real time. You like what you see, you push the button, you're in the mail tomorrow, the next day at a fraction of the cost. And we do all the tracking and automation and all of that for you. And over time, we found that to be very successful for our customers.
That's great. And what are some of the tools, websites that you like to use or recommend for kind of building that list? You mentioned that a client's going to just upload their list. Where do they go to get a list like that, where they know the data is going to be accurate and they can kind of drill down on who they really want to target?
That's a great question because lists are so important, targeted lists. A lot of customers, it really depends on what kind of a list we're looking for. We can have compiled lists or we can have a subscription list. A lot of customers have their own house list, people that they have a relationship with, they've purchased with before. But there are a lot of organizations that sell data too. It's a billion-dollar industry. If you're using a tool like Zairmail, or the company we run, there is an option inside Zairmail to purchase a list where you can put in demographic criteria. Am I looking for a consumer, a business? Looking at homeowners or renters, or just basic demographics. Within Zairmail, we're doing consumer lists through Axiom, which is the largest consumer database in the United States. We're doing business lists through Dun & Bradstreet. We also have access to thousands of others if you have custom lists. But if you type list broker into the browser, you'll come up with hundreds of different options. And the question is, how do we get at, what are we trying to target and what's the best way to get at those folks? In the old days, we would use magazine subscription lists to try and get people with an interest, in a certain area. Magazine subscription lists are harder these days because, as you know, people aren't buying as many magazines. But there are companies that compile lists all the time. The three big credit reporting agencies, they'll sell lists as well. For some banks and mortgage companies and people like that, we can actually do credit scored mailing lists so that we can match an underwriting criteria. So if for example, you're a bank and you're trying to sell cash out refis, we can look at your exact underwriting criteria, including FICO scores, and pull lists of people that match your underwriting criteria. So there's a lot of really interesting things we can do with that.
Very good. My last question is on the type of mail that I should be sending out. I'm sure there's some level of psychology between sending a postcard where people can see what your message is right on the postcard, they're not have to open anything, versus a letter where they open the letter. There's maybe some form of commitment that they've already made. And now that they've opened it, what is this about type of thing? What's a good form of mail that you guys prefer to send out, you recommend people send out because it just works better?
That's a really important question. And we have lots of customers that wrestle with that. It really depends on what you're trying to meet, what you're trying to offer, and how complex the message is. Certainly, dimensional mailing you described earlier is a very powerful tool. It also tends to be more expensive than, say, your generic postcard mailing.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to be very targeted, and you got to make sure that you convert at a very high rate for that to make sense from an ROI standpoint. But in terms of general pieces that we sell, we typically, for our customers, we're doing a postcard, a self-mailer, a letter, or a snapback. Snapback, not everybody's familiar with that format. A snapback is, the technical name for it is a pressure sealed mailer. It's the mailer you get when, the bank sends you a PIN number in the mail where you tear off the edges, right, and open it up. So if you have a clear message that you can communicate relatively quickly and you're concerned about cost, a postcard is usually the most effective tool. The postcards usually come in a few different sizes, but the most common sizes are 4x6 or 6x9. It used to be the 4x6 had a discount postal rate for the U.S. Postal Service. It still does, but the Postal Service has been raising rates twice a year over the last couple of years. And during one of those increases, they decided to extend that small postcard rate to large postcards. So both small postcards, 4x6 or 6x9, have a discount postal rate that's less than the letter rate, which helps with the ROI. With a postcard, the advantage is it's like a little billboard in the mail. So you're going to pull it out of the mailbox, you get an immediate impression. People can act on it, not act on it. They can set it aside. They can put it on the fridge, you get it on the fridge. That's a win for a long time. The challenge with a postcard is that there's a limited amount of real estate to work with. Oh, by the way, our most common format is the 6x9 jumbo postcard with color one side in terms of cost effectiveness and response rates. But you've got limited real estate to work with, and I don't have any privacy in that. So, for example, we talked about mortgage mailing earlier. If I'm going to communicate something like the amount of homeowners' existing mortgage and what their new payments look like and things like that might be personal in nature, I don't want to expose that on a postcard usually. If I can go to the next step, I can get a self-mailer. A self-mailer is going to give me a whole page of information. Usually self-mailers, usually 1 or 2 pages, 8.5 by 11. We fold it, tri-fold it, and tab it. It's going to give me a little more room. I can still get the message across, but it's semi-private, I would say. I mean, because you can look in the ends and the people don't feel the same way. A self-mailer doesn't feel the same when it comes in the mail. It doesn't seem like it feels like it has the same value. I'd say we do less of those than the other formats. The next one is a letter mail. And traditional letter mail it has the advantage that I can have as complex a message usually as I want. I mean, I can have a number of pages. Most of the mail we see these days are a single page because people's attention spans are very small. I can do stuff like I can tell people, what their existing mortgage looks like, what the new mortgage would look like, what the payments look like, or, it doesn't have to be mortgage marketing for whatever. I can be very detailed about that information because it's a private communication between us, between the marketer and the recipient. The challenge it does pose, though, is then I need to get an open because I don't have a billboard in the mail. And so maybe I'll use a teaser on the front. Maybe, using first class mail helps. Using a real stamp helps. So there's other techniques we can use to get an open. If we move forward from that to a snapbacks usually get open because people will associate it with a pin or a rebate or something like that. And I have a little bit less real estate to work with. It is private. So it's kind of a hybrid. But we have clients that'll use a lot of those. Not everybody offers them. They do take special equipment, but we offer them across our network and we do a lot of them. So it really depends on, what you're trying to communicate, what level you're willing to invest at and how much privacy you need.
Okay. Very good. Well, Wilson, thank you so much for being here today. For those that want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can reach us at www.Zairmail. That's like airmail with a Z on the front, .com. We have a toll-free number. Unlike a lot of folks online these days, we love to talk to customers. Call the toll-free number. There's always going to be somebody there. It gets answered 24 hours a day. If you want to talk about, you don't even have to buy anything. You want to talk about marketing. You want to talk about positioning. You just want to share stories. We're there. You can think of it like direct mail therapy session if you want. So we're happy to do that. We're out there to help people be successful. And if we can make some friends along the way, we're happy to do that. We do have a new product that I think is a game changer for a lot of folks. If I can share that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a new desktop application called Speedy. You can download a copy at www.zairmail.com/speedy. First 2 letters are free. It doesn't take a credit card, so anybody could use it. The basic idea of Speedy is you've got if you have a letter, either a PDF Word format document, you can just drop it on the icon. You'll get a pop-up, says, where do you want to send it? You put in the address, out it goes. So even 1 letter you can send automated right from your desktop. We will track it. We'll send you an email and confirm when it's delivered. As I said, the first 2 are free. If you can give us referrals, we'll give you a couple more free. So in theory, you could send free letters forever. Faster, easier, more reliable. It's more of what we've been doing for a very long time.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again.
Well, thank you so much, Jared. We really appreciate it.